March is Women's History Month, and there is no guest that I could think of that would be more fitting to have other than Laurie Nelson. Really, I know she will not call herself the number one female loan officer in Greater Pittsburgh, but we'll just say that she is year in and year out the top producing one of the top producing female loan officers, and she is now with HMA Mortgage. And Laurie, it's just there's not a better, again, there's not a better person that we could have here to talk about, women in the industry. And I mean, you have an all female team behind you as well, and you are a team lead. So yeah, let's just get right into it. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for
And
having me.
oh, it's my pleasure. So
We go way back.
we do. So you were
We
with another
do.
company, and so now you're with HMA. And how long has that been a partnership?
I rejoined HMA in August of last year. So just,
Okay.
yeah.
So
So it's been
the
6, 7 months.
right, right.
And I had worked here prior. I had worked here once before from 2014 to 2018.
When it was
So
Hall and Mortgage.
yeah, yeah.
Now, did at that time did you have your own team at that time, or were you with someone else's team?
I had my own team, but my team was very small. I shared an assistant with somebody else there. And so prior to that, I didn't even have a team. I did everything myself. Like I just did it all. And I
Yeah. Well,
think
that
I think teams in both real estate and in mortgage are becoming increasingly popular. I see some very successful individual agents joining forces with another agent. And definitely in my industry, um, years ago, if you approached the owner of the company you were working for and said, I want a full-time assistant and I want you to pay for it, I mean, they would have laughed at me. I mean,
hmm
it didn't happen. It's sort of been I don't know. I think it's a good development and it's
right.
kind of grown over the years that having the support of a team and being a part of a team can really help you be more successful and create some
I got
balance
you.
in your life.
Right, and I'm sure that you can speak to the people on your team, especially an assistant of some kind. They really are the glue that holds everything together in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's
right,
yeah. And
right.
so and you know, I recently was on another podcast, believe it or not, and one of the things that I talked about was how, I hate to stereotype, but I'm going to talk from my experience. Over the 25 years I've been in this business, I have seen, unfortunately, men advocate for themselves for more support in team members than women. And, it's hard it's harder sometimes for them to find their voice. I know it took me a while to
Interesting.
advocate for myself. Yeah, and it took more than one try for me to obtain the team that I did. I was shot down the first time and I had to go back and ask again and just ask a little bit differently.
Yeah, so it's interesting because, I think at least in like the real estate side or the realtor side, um, I think that sometimes we look for an assistant after they already needed to be there. So like,
Exactly.
then you got to bring them in, and the world's on fire. Your world is on fire at that point. Hard to train, but there's also certain amount of responsibilities that we then take on because we're responsible for this individual, their growth, their money, and so forth. So, and you don't want to set them up to fail. So it's kind of like, how can I make this work, for that person? It's a big step. Also, I think sometimes we have a hard time letting go in delegating some of those tasks to someone as well. So I think it's like, in a way, it's also a growth, not just in terms of volume, but just growth in mindset, that this is going to take so much off our plate so we can focus on the tasks that are important.
Absolutely. I mean, delegating is an art, and it is, and letting go is something it's not easy. I've talked to so many mortgage professionals over my years that, I can think of a couple of colleagues I really considered friends where I couldn't fathom the amount of business they were doing without any help. And they were so stubborn about getting an assistant because they were convinced that they did everything better.
Right.
And it's so fun when and I was like, you're crazy, you need to do this, and it's funny to see them now with a team or with at least an assistant, and they're just laughing at like why didn't they listen years ago?
Right.
Their life is so much better. But sometimes you have to slow down to speed up, and
Right.
you have to realize that no one is going to do everything just like you. But if you put the right people in place and you work together, if you're the right group, if you really connect, you end up working very similarly to each other. And then then you're just like this unstoppable unit where you don't know how you can't imagine life without them.
Right, right. And so I know that like sometimes too, I've been to teams events and things, and it was a goal of mine. I'm not saying it's no longer a goal of mine. For those who don't know, like I am with Angle and Folkers Pittsburgh, and that type of structure is already provided by Angle and Folkers for me. So, but at other brokerages I was at, it was a goal to have this team, and oftentimes we're looking for someone who's maybe our yin and yang. So the mundane tasks that maybe I'm not good at or I hate, that's when I'm looking for that support on that side of things. So, and, for me, having someone that works behind the scenes and is more detailed and organized than I am, that's really huge for me, because I like welcome that because I lack in that skill set because it's a skill set. It really is. uh, and
Absolutely.
and I lack it, and I admit it. I can admit that.
I do too. It's hilarious that I made it as far as I did without someone like Paige and
Right.
Nicole, who've been with me for years now. I mean, Paige is my transaction coordinator, but I mean, she always knows what's going on with our files.
Hmm.
Always, always,
Hmm.
always. It's just, I don't, I can't imagine. We all have our strengths, and we've figured out and we've revised our process, and I listen to them, and we figure out the best way to run our team based on all the team's strengths and the team input. I'm definitely not calling the shots. Definitely not. I
Right.
listen to what they say is best. They're boots on the ground, handling every transaction, and
Yeah. So
my
it's a
my
unit.
strengths are different than theirs,
Yeah, that's awesome.
for
Awesome.
sure. For sure.
So let's talk about So where are you from? Where'd you grow up? Because
Me?
I
Okay.
know the answer to this,
You
but
do?
I think the audience. Yeah, well, we talked about this. So
Okay,
so
that's right.
let's
That's
let's
right.
talk to people about. You're not from Pittsburgh originally, are you?
No, no. So I've been here for 25 years, which I think counts me now as an official Pittsburgher. I
Okay.
think that by New York standards, you're a New Yorker if you've been there for 25 years. So I think we
Yeah.
should apply the same rule here.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is where my family is. So I have two boys raised here, born here. We've
Hmm.
never even left this immediate little, our family in Franklin Park. But I was born in Connecticut, and I spent like half I was there till I was 12, and then my parents moved to a small town called Warren, PA, when I was about 13. So a little half and half.
Warren's up north, like
It
near the New
is
York border, I
northeast,
think, right? Yeah.
absolutely not far from
Right.
Chautauqua Lake, the Kinzu Dam, lots
Yeah.
of fishing and hunting, and
Yes. Chautauqua fishing. Yes.
yeah, for sure. So that's pretty different, New England and Connecticut versus, a small town in Warren. But my dad's from Warren, my mom's from Connecticut, and we did a little of this in between,
Yeah.
back and forth. We did some moving around. And I didn't move to Pittsburgh until spent like 25 years ago when I graduated from college. I headed to the Cape, skipped law school, and decided to be a bartender. My
And is
parents were
is
so
that
proud.
well? That's not uncommon. Where did you bartend? Is it
Oh
still
gosh.
there?
One of the places is definitely still there, without a doubt, called the Post Office Cafe in Provincetown, Mass. There's probably a place in
Oh, you
Providence, Rhode
okay?
Island.
I'm sorry. So you were in
I went
Mass
back to, yeah, I
bartending.
went to
Oh,
school in
gotcha. Okay.
Massachusetts. I went to
All right.
UMass Amherst, and then I
Yeah.
never I didn't come back to Pittsburgh for like 10 years, or
Okay.
Pennsylvania in
Gotcha.
general.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gone. I stayed up in New England and I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And, one day I kind of had an aha moment when I was surveying everybody on the 4th of July and looking at how much fun they were having and thinking, my life's so good. Like, I basically live in vacation land. I go to the beach all day. I make cash. Like, I was happy.
Yeah.
And it hit me like, I want to be the person on that side of the table or that side. I want someone waiting on me. I want to have Friday night and Saturday night off instead of working. And I literally picked up and moved to Boston. And back in the 90s, you found a job
Mm.
with the want ads in the paper. So
Ah.
literally, I got the Boston Globe and started circling ads. And I had a degree in political economy, which didn't exactly fast track me into like the perfect career. It was really more of a base to move on and get further degrees.
Right.
It,
Right.
wasn't easy. So I
Yeah,
landed a
I was
sales
a
job.
psychology major, so it's essentially, well, I felt it was essentially the same thing because I had to go to grad school to do what I wanted to do. You know what I
But
mean?
look at you now, like a psychology major makes a great realtor. And I
There's
think a
no question.
bartender, you're a people person.
Yeah,
You know how to relate to
and
people. It's
I
all about
absolutely, and
relationships.
I am absolutely still a psychology student. There's no question about it. I study it. I read a lot of books about it. In terms of now, I'm reading a lot about emotional intelligence and EQ, and just trying to get better. I'm still a psychology student. There's no question about that. So when did you move to Pittsburgh?
I moved to Pittsburgh in 1999.
Okay, and you just was
I
this
did
a wanted ad situation, or did you?
No, it wasn't. It was when I lived in Boston, I got a job. I actually was hired selling cars at a Porsche and Audi dealership. That was
Ooh,
yeah, it was
nice.
probably the hardest thing I ever did. After my first day on the job, I'm in my 20s. I didn't even have the right outfits for this. I was living at the beach
Yeah.
and I showed up to a sales meeting. I think there were 16 guys and me. I left that meeting and cried the whole way home. I thought, my God, this is terrible. I mean, everyone was sizing me up and I had no idea what I was doing. Not sizing me up like, just it was so intimidating just being in
Yeah.
that
Okay. I
space.
gotcha. I gotcha.
And just I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. What have I done? And I just kept showing up and showing up. Next thing you know it, I was kicking some ass.
Oh,
And
nice. So
yeah,
this sounds like a very much of a coming of age
yeah,
job you had
it
then.
was. It
Okay.
was a it was the
Right, because
hardest job. I think
you got your like you learn how to be tough.
I did. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. I think I learned not just how to be tough, but how to connect with people who are coming in and they're nervous about what they're about to purchase because people had a reputation as being like slimy and salesy, and
Right.
so I think still what I do now, people are nervous to talk to me. Sometimes they're nervous about talking about their financing and opening up like everything about
Right.
themselves, and
And
so
that
making people
that's hard for I mean, and myself included to get into all that. Yeah.
yeah, so that's not hard for me, but I also think it teaches you how to make people feel more comfortable about making
Sure.
important decisions.
Right.
It's very hard to make an important decision if you're nervous or afraid or you're feeling guarded. So if you can
Right.
get someone to relax and
Yeah.
show them that you're not trying to pitch them anything that they don't need, I think
Right.
you start establishing, just a way to connect with people.
Connection.
Yeah.
Correct. All about connection because then
Yes.
you kind of your guard comes down. Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so right. So how did you get into the mortgage industry?
When I moved to Pittsburgh, I didn't plan on being here. It was sort of a temporary. I had in Boston prior to coming to Pittsburgh, I had moved from car sales to financing and then to independent leasing. So I dealt a lot with loans, credit reporting. So I had a good background in the financing world. And when I came to Pittsburgh, it was supposed to be temporary. I had moved from Boston to New York and followed a boy, and things didn't work out like I thought. And when he moved to Michigan, I decided that I wasn't going to follow him to another state. So I came to Pittsburgh and moved in with my sister and realized after not too long that time to get a job and get my act back together. And I fell into mortgage. Like it just seemed like a natural next step. Um, and boy, back then, so we're talking in like 1999.
Okay.
So this was like when we still hand wrote 1003s, and I remember our office had one computer.
Yeah. Right.
So it was so different. And
Right.
there was no training. It was
Right.
literally sink or swim. No, there's nothing, no mentorship, no coaching, no none of that. It was figure this out and you make it or you don't.
Right.
So I figured it
Right.
out.
I remember I was in 2000, that's when I started in real estate. I wasn't a realtor, but I had worked for 17 years in corporate America essentially. And I remember that we had computers. It was a DOS based system, so everything was like black and it looked like Atari. And then
Yeah,
we would have fax machines that were just running constantly.
shiny
Right.
paper and it rolls. I know
Right.
I hate talking about how old I am, but
Right. And then I remember we would have, so I worked in appraisals. And
oh yeah.
so it was like an appraisal management company, if anyone knows what that's like. And we would get so many that, because they would do like, we would call it a soft copy. So appraiser sends like the URAR 1004 through and all the addendums, they would send the whole file with the pictures that were taped to the form. They would send it via FedEx. So over a period of time, we would accumulate all this mail that they would actually hire, um, like not in, well, maybe interns or just like summer help to get caught up with this mail so they could scan all this stuff because it was just piled to the ceiling.
Yeah,
In like document chaos essentially.
right.
So yeah, it was a different time, and I remember how cool I thought I was whenever, because I became a team lead, how cool I thought I was when I had my own email address. I was like, oh, I got email
Right.
now.
Now people, I mean, we
Yeah,
used to do business over the phone and in person,
yeah,
and now if someone doesn't text you back in 30 seconds, you're slow.
right,
But
right.
you know, I mean, I wouldn't want to go back. I mean, this has made
No,
my life a lot easier, but
no,
I do think people
no.
getting into our business now, I feel like just the culture has evolved. I think that, unless I just didn't notice it when I was younger, I feel like there's a more supportive community out there. There's, a lot of people do coaching, there's a lot of mentoring, there are a lot of
Right.
teams. I feel like people across my industry, I didn't know anybody outside my little office. And now, I mean, I love connecting with, I know so many people that are in the mortgage industry that work at different companies than me. And it feels like
Hmm.
sometimes when we go to an event that's full of realtors, I often gravitate to my competitors just because, and I call them that just, in a friendly way, but like
Right, right.
we're all in the same world, in the
Hmm.
same market, and I find that most of the people that work at different companies that I do, or even the same company, I feel like maybe it's just Pittsburgh, but I feel like we're a lot more collaborative.
Yeah.
I don't feel like people are stabbing each other in the back or something, I mean,
Right,
of course,
right.
when you're after business, it's all business, but outside of business, I think that our community here is really, I don't know, I think
Yeah.
we're pretty unique,
I
maybe
I
in
know,
that
like
respect.
I definitely don't think like other agents are taking from me.
Right.
If somehow I lost a client, or like I lose a client, I think that's my fault generally, or it's on the client. I really have never thought another agent stole them or did something, um
Right.
that was
Right.
unreasonable. Somehow it's usually my fault, or the client just didn't feel a any sort of loyalty or whatnot. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you mentioned coaching. Are you are you coached, like, do you get coaching through HMA, or do you have it like this is something that you do on you like your own in terms of growth?
I mean, I will say HMA is really, really pro coaching.
Yes.
And we have peer coaching available
Okay.
there, and they also are aligned with a very, very impressive coach. I've met with him a couple times. I think he's fantastic, but I have landed coaching outside of the mortgage industry.
Mm.
I do work with a coach. Her name is Abby Schiller. She really just works with women. Um,
Awesome.
she does, and her style of coaching is not how do I get more business, but how do I live a better life? How do
Yes.
I reach my goals?
Yes.
And, what can we do to make this the best year ever and the best
Yes.
life ever? And I think if
Right.
you're following someone like that, it will spill over into your business because it's sort of how you
Yes.
approach your day. And
Right.
I've worked with her a couple of times. So I'm not working with your standard industry specific coach. Um, and I never have. And that might be a good thing to do, but I do think that HMA, like, if I want to compare it to what I've known in the industry, I'd say that they are extremely focused on marketing and growth and ideas on how to be better at what you do and not as much like policing or products or it's a pretty healthy conversation amongst our colleagues there and the ownership, and the style is noticeably different than what I experienced the first time I was there or at some other
Right.
places, and it's refreshing. It's um
Right. And I can relate. So I'm coached by Brian Buffini and Buffini and Company. You know, their motto is, living the good life. So it really is about the various aspects of your life, your business, but not just your business. I mean, our business is a big part of our makeup, but it's not all who we are, you know. So if I wanted to, I know what you're saying, like it more industry specific of coaching, and I don't know for sure, but I would imagine that's probably similar to, like, in our industry, like maybe a Tom Ferry type of coaching,
yeah, that's what I'm
um,
talking about. Well, and
to
Buffini's pretty
where,
real estate directed.
well, yeah, because he came from the industry,
Yeah, he's great. He's
but
hilarious too.
but I if I wanted to make like a kick-ass listing presentation, I mean, they provide that. They do all
We
that, but
totally understand.
it may not be like, if that's what you're looking for, you might be disappointed because it's a little bit, it's different than that.
Oh,
And
okay.
and they'll ask you when you start, what do you want out of coaching? And so some people may want it to, have more time to spend with their family. Some of it for me, when, and I'm still in this mode, is, what can, growing my business. But right now, as we know, I had a heart attack in December, so my coach isn't necessarily pushing me in terms of, how many calls I'm making and so forth. I mean, yes, but no. It's also about, self-care and making sure that I'm okay, because that's, because I'm still going through things like rehabbing and fatigue and things like that. So, but it's really in what you want out of it. That really is the driving force. You're the driving force. And then you have a profile that they give you. It used to be called the Heritage Profile. Now it's Real Strengths, with about 15 attributes of I'm wired, and they coach me according to how I'm wired. So how and what my strengths are with those attributes, and also what my kryptonite is with those attributes. So
Like your superpower,
exactly. So
right?
it's often we go back and reference that, especially when we go through struggles of, So I'm my number one attribute is a free spirit, meaning that I really struggle if there's too much structure there. I hate it. That's why I'm not in corporate America anymore, obviously. But at the same time, because I'm such a free spirit, I need to put in systems and some structures, or else it's a little nomadic. You know what I mean? And that's how the coaching,
Absolutely.
comes through. So it's not like, okay, how to make like a great like listing presentation. Not saying that that's not important, because yeah, I mean, but it with Buffini and Company, that's certainly not something I'm looking for. But of course, we're constantly being educated about the market as well, and that's more where Brian's role is, because Brian's not my direct coach, but in terms
Sure.
of his mentorship, that's where we're learning. Gosh, I've learned so much just about the market and how what to expect and why. Things, are why these predictions are what they are. Things like that. So yeah, it's is it has it not been huge for your life?
Yeah, it would be, I mean, I'd say in 2018, I I worked with a very small group. There were four of us with the gentleman who now actually lives in Canada. And it was really, really intense coaching. I mean, it was
Mm-hmm.
90 minutes every week for a year. It was I mean, it was really, and it was, the connection between it was three other guys and me. And we
Mm-hmm.
were a part of a larger group that we were the only four that took advantage of this. It was, I mean, I don't know what took me so long. I guess it just wasn't something that was presented to me earlier. I wish I did it in my 30s instead of my 40s because,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 3 weeks into it, my husband was like, "You're just like a nicer person,
Mm.
like just happier, just and when you're in it, it's great because you're so aware. I mean, I had post-its everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How you show up is matters.
Oh
And
yeah.
and I did it. And if you're not in it every day, as much as you've learned from it, I'm gonna say that you do start to, some of it starts to melt a little. Like
Yeah.
if you're meeting with somebody every week for 90 minutes, or right now I'm meeting with somebody every week for an hour, in my head, I'm like, what would Abby do? Or what would Mark say? I have those moments where, I take a beat. And then, I'm not perfect. I have to give myself some grace. Sometimes I
Right.
react too quickly and I'm not always proud of my reactions. And,
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's because I'm human. But I do think that the coaching has made a world of difference. And you know, it would just so recommend it. And, everybody would, different coaches or different prices and relate to people in different
Oh,
ways.
yeah, and certainly, again, it comes back to like what you want out of it too,
Right.
and so and it's an investment too, because it's not cheap.
No,
Um,
it's not.
but it's also, I've really learned that a lot of things when I go through struggles now, I fall back to my coaching and things I've
Absolutely.
learned. Like I fall back on it, like things in my head then help me react of what I've learned from that. Does that make sense?
It
So
does
like so
because
I'm not like freaking out per se.
exactly.
I kind of
It's
fall back to like all the training and coaching that I've had over the years now, you
yes. In
know?
fact, both of us are in industries where things that we least expect just come out of nowhere,
Right.
and I've
Yeah.
worked with different companies and different levels of operation. I joined a company once where, the operations was like just not what it needed to be. And that obviously impacted my ability to get to the closing table like I should. And, I felt like I was losing control. And there was a time prior to coaching and when I was younger where I probably would have just freaked out, like on the phone,
Yeah.
personally. I probably would have let something kind of, derail my day so that I
Hmm.
could no longer be productive. And when I learned how to work through that and take it as like, okay, this is not a problem, this is a situation. And how am I going to fix this? And let's take a step back. And I started problem solving in a way that I was like, oh, like I wanted to
Right.
text, and this was after my
Right.
coaching. Like, I would text Mark and be like, guess what I did today? You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
took something that was a disaster and I turned it into this really positive experience because it's not necessarily what happens, it's how you react to it.
Right.
So, if something starts to go sideways and you panic your buyer and you panic everybody else, then everyone's going to panic. But there's no need to do it that way. So, I think success in that respect feels to me is to handle things that come your way with like ease and grace
Right. Right.
that are unpleasant, unforeseen
it,
circumstances.
and a lot of times too, like when something now comes up, I go back to things that I've worked through with my coach, and things that she said, things even that I've learned from Brian, of course, too, because in a lot of ways I've spent a lot of time just with him through various. I mean, we've met before and everything, so it's not that I don't know him, but like he's all obviously generally talking to a large audience versus
Yeah.
with me I got to stand in line for 2 hours to talk to him, kind of a thing. But and at that point we're making jokes, not like getting real serious kind of a thing.
Because he's a funny guy.
Oh yeah, yeah, and
He's
and
very
actually
funny.
he'll talk about his presentation style is to make people laugh and whatnot. So that's very
Yeah,
important to him.
he's very funny.
Right. So let's talk about so as a woman in this lending and finance space. Okay, so roughly about the stats are like 44% of loan officers, if that's what you want to call it, are female. Which is interesting. We're sort of in the same boat because 35% of real estate agents are male. So it's very much a more of a woman dominated industry, and then yours is oftentimes male. But we had this conversation off air. A lot of these female of the 44% may not, they may be someone's assistant. So in your situation, it sounds like a unicorn to me where you're leading the team. Everyone is a lady, everyone's female. So talk about that. Like what was it like, even like, because I would hope to think most of us have kind of grown up a lot in the workplace over the past 15 years or so.
Oh, that's a big question. So I think that those stats are a little off in the fact that a lot of men that have a team have licensed assistants that are women.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like if you pull up the ranks of loan officers in Pittsburgh, you're going to see that like most everyone at the top is a team lead is a man, not a woman.
Okay.
We're not, and there's a lot of fabulous women in mortgage here in Pittsburgh.
Right.
Really fabulous, but we're still not putting up the numbers that our male counterparts are. But a lot of them have teams that are supported by women. So, I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
would love to see that change.
Right.
Um, I think you know, there's so many. I found that I really had to speak out to get the kind of support I needed at one of my prior companies,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt for a little bit that there were some male colleagues of mine that had more support staff than I did, and
Mm.
I was turned down. Unfortunately, and I speak for myself, it's not fair to speak for all other women, but sometimes I have felt like when I stand up for myself, I come across as complaining. And that
Mm.
is sort of something that they've pegged on women when we advocate or assert ourselves, there's this fear that like we sound like we're whiny or bitchy.
Mm-hmm.
And for my male colleagues, that assertiveness is not perceived the same way. So there is a fine line between advocating yourself as a woman in finance or corporate America or any job it's just, it can be, it not always is, but it can be a really different conversation. Even just the reactions I've gotten to some of the statements I've said, the way I've been talked to, and I can, and I think a lot of women like me can say this. Like, I was talking to someone else recently, but it's like I can handle it. Like, I'm not afraid of a little badger, funny humor. I'm not very sensitive to like language and stuff. But there's no way I haven't been spoken to differently than my male colleagues by by leadership over the course of my career. I'm not
Mm,
singling anybody out, but
mhm.
there's just there's a slightly different tone. And I mean, it is what it is, but I think that
Do you think, let me ask you this. Do you think that has anything to do with that maybe someone in a more in a management role is not used to dealing with a
no,
female? Oh, so it kind of
no,
goes, so it kind of goes back to
no,
that old
no, I
adage of,
don't. I
mm,
think I think that the relationships we establish with our colleagues and with our leadership and even with our team are extremely individual. I think different women can behave very differently and different men can behave very differently. And a lot of
sure,
us
yeah,
sometimes set the tone. Is such a, I mean, it's pretty obvious I am like a really huge advocate and supporter of women and women in business, but I've also really easily been one of the guys, and I'm really comfortable with that as well. And I can joke with the best of them, etc. But like, here's an example of something that's never going to happen to a guy. And this isn't a story I've shared before, but um, there was a place where I worked once where we had a booth at the Pirates game, and
okay,
it was a retirement party for somebody, and there was, some pretty high up managers it's casual, it's a Pirates game. We're wearing t-shirts, and
hmm,
one of my
yeah,
colleagues, who is actually, I felt like a really good friend of mine, in front of some really big managers, made a comment right out loud about how big my boobs looked. Like,
oh,
oh my God, look at your, and no one's ever going to do that to you. So like now I'm in front of three other guys who don't know what to say or do, and I laughed it off. And that's not something that's going to happen.
that sounds insanely embarrassing. Actually,
It
is
it
that how you
you know
felt?
I just, yeah, it made me feel really uncomfortable, but I
Yeah.
didn't. And what's funny is like, that's a huge HR violation, but I
Oh
wasn't
my
gonna
God, yeah.
make a huge stink about a colleague who didn't, I know he didn't mean it that way. Like, that's like a situation where, like, as a woman, okay, now I can make a really big deal about this with the company. But unfortunately, what I think of is like, then you have to go through this, like, well, is it worth it? Is it worth
Right.
it to get HR involved? Is it worth
Mm,
it to have a mark against this employee? Is it worth it to make all of this awkward? And those are the kind of situations that get brushed off all the time. And I don't know that it makes me, maybe I should have done the right thing and reported that. To be honest with you, I really just didn't feel like the bother of it. But if I experienced that amongst other things, just think of how many other things are going on out in the
right.
world. Like, and this was a friend. So,
Mm,
you know, until all that, and I'm not trying to make this a big like Me Too moment, but like, that's not going to happen to you,
right.
You'll never have that probably awkward, you know, talk about your, you know,
Right.
and
It just sounds really like, I can't imagine, like, it just sounds really awkward because then you're like wanting to put a
I mean,
jacket
I
on or something
I
like that.
laughed it
It's
off and
just,
was like, yeah, it's this is me.
mm,
Like, can't do anything about it. Like, had these since 10th grade. And I just moved on and laughed it off. And I didn't let the get the best of me. But like, there's just, it happens. It's
right.
out there, and it's just,
I
I
will
guess.
just say this. So, I hope that I've grown as and become a better person. I know that in my younger days and even in corporate America, certainly because, guys, I'm the kind of person, with my friends, I'll bust chops, as we call it. You know what I mean? So, in a way, that might be busting chops with you as well.
And that's
But,
fine, but in the right
well,
setting.
right. But, and actually, but I would disagree. I don't think it is okay.
Well, busting
that
chops and making, I mean, that is like kind of an isolated incident that came to mind. I think that women are absolutely judged based on their appearance more so than our male
oh sure,
colleagues. I
absolutely.
see really successful, no offense to the guys out there, but really unattractive, like big guys that are powerhouses. But if you take a woman who's looking a little too old or has gained a
Hmm.
little weight, like
Hmm.
we're judged for what we wear, for how we
Yeah,
look, and assumptions are made about women and their intelligence and their integrity based on our appearances far more so than they are our male colleagues. And that's just, I'd love for that to change, but
right.
you can't
I
ignore that that's not. I mean,
right.
I
And
once had a woman agent tell me like years ago that she was like, geez, she's like, I hate to say this, but based on your appearance, I didn't realize you were actually really smart. I was like, I mean, this was 20 years ago, but I was like, wow, thank you. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Like, I guess I just thought, you just, so I don't even know what that means,
I
but
don't know what that means.
I know,
Well, so
but
what I was getting at though, like I
sorry, I
actually
derailed you a
no no
little.
no, but like that's the thing. Like what I was trying to say though, like I don't think that you busting chops like that, like with you, even though you're kind of like one of the guys, that's still not okay. And I think for like a long time, so like if I would make an off-color joke, you know, mind you that this lady, this girl in the workplace, that's not. I mean, I'm an only child, but that's not my sister. I can't joke like that, and
Right.
because what I'm expecting, oh, shut up, Michael, kind of thing, and that is not, even though my heart or my mind had no malice behind it, that person still may have felt uncomfortable despite that doesn't mean just because my heart and my mind had no malice behind it doesn't make it harmless. And
Yeah.
I think that those are the things that back then we may meet as men, or with anything, like sometimes race is a thing. Those things can still be hurtful to the other person on the other end, which therefore does not makes it not okay. You know what I'm saying? Even though we didn't mean anything behind it, just because of that doesn't mean that it's okay then.
Absolutely. I mean,
You know what I
you
mean?
need to be really thoughtful about your language. And I think, if you want to tell somebody they look great, that's great. But if you want to
Right.
walk up to someone and say, "Did you just lose a bunch of weight?" I feel like that's a little personal, Tell someone they
Right.
look great and keep it at that. You don't need to go into, you know, like,
And what
you
is
know,
what's scary about that is because that might be a huge struggle for that person. You just
it's
don't
just
know.
right. I mean, it's messy out there right now. And another thing, like just now that my mind's racing and you've got me on this, like, the male, like men in mortgage versus women, and do you truly believe that when you become a mom, like as mothers, there's just this, there's a, if we decide to take time off, which we really deserve to have, that we have to take a step back in our business, especially as commissioned people. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
making a decision to, you know, it's a little bit, I think that if we had 10 years and there was me and a guy who didn't have any kids, didn't have, he was just like working every day. And then we took a woman with 3 children and did the exact same thing for 10 years, who's going to be ahead of who? I don't know. If they all did exactly the same things, it's a little tougher sometimes I think, for someone who's a mother to we have this, like, that you've heard mom guilt, and I'm sure there's dad guilt, but since I'm the guest here, I'm not going to make assumptions about that. But you're trying to be like a killer at your job and killer with your kids. And I know a lot of women who are very successful in business sometimes feel like they're either being good at one thing or good at the other, or they're dropping the ball at both. Like it is a juggling act
Right.
trying to be
And
like
there's
a
like
really the best mom ever and then also be like the number one loan officer. Like it's so hard to
and
juggle that.
there's so much judgment too upon each thing for
All of
women, I
it.
think. You know what I mean?
There
Because
is.
then if you're working hard and you're grinding, then all of a sudden you're not like the mother that you should be, kind of a thing. I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure that that is things that women deal with. Am I? Is that the
Absolutely. And
type
like
of
I know
judgment?
there's a lot of I have a lot of friends who recently have had babies and have gone through really, really awful postpartum. Just
Mm,
awful. And if you're commissioned and you're going through that and you need to rise and shine and put on your happy face and cold call and go out there and get business, like how do you know how it's so hard to do that? And that's not even talked about enough. So like that, and I have good friends that have been through this even just recently, and some that potentially are going through this right now. And our business, both yours and mine, is it's really there's not a lot of room to take a step back
hmm
unless you
hmm
have a phenomenal team in place,
Right.
to
Right.
pick things up while you're not there. But that's, I mean, it's just I think part of what makes it a little bit harder
Oh,
for in a
I, I,
business.
I can't imagine, because even when we had our second daughter, who's now she's almost 4, I even felt, because my bride and I, we both essentially work from home now. She's fully remote, and so we basically our dining room is an office, which I'm in right now. And but even when my youngest was little, I certainly felt like it was hurting my production, let's say,
Yeah.
because I couldn't, and that's just me as dad, because and I'm not saying like every situation is different, but certainly I know that Emberlyn probably wanted my wife more, so it was probably even harder in her case. But it was an eye opening moment of what it could potentially be like, just knowing that dad was even having a harder time being productive, let alone how much possibly more demanding it is for mom, you know.
Right. And, I'm not one to say what everyone's family is different and who's the lead caretaker. And I'm certainly not suggesting that men don't have this, the same obstacles, but your body did not go through what ours did for nine
Right.
months and
Yes.
postpartum. And if you were decided to be the food supply, like, doing all that. And, I remember when I had my first baby, it's when I actually and he's 20 now. I decided to open my own mortgage company at the same time. And the reason was I was all referrals and somebody was getting, 40% of my commission.
Mm,
And I just
hmm
thought to myself, like, I'm not going back into the office. Like, I'm just going to get my own license.
hmm
And I so I got my own license. I had just had a baby, and I mean I wasn't like killing it at that point, obviously. And I just bought a house, and the air conditioning broke.
mm,
Um in my office I set up on the second floor, and I did not have the funds at that point to even fix the air conditioning. Like I couldn't have fixed my air conditioning. Like
hmm
I did not like I didn't have $7,000 in my back pocket to fix that. So that summer I worked with no AC, with the baby basically glued to me. And I remember like at my desk, I would have Dylan like glued to me, and I was literally on the phone sweating buckets, like, and making mortgages. You know what I mean? And like, I'm surprised that I didn't go completely crazy. I probably could have used some coaching back then,
Yeah.
but
Well, who
but
could
I did
afford it at
it.
that point?
I
Because
did it. And he's
like
and
your
he's turned
finances
out
are kind of like,
okay.
yeah, your finances are like kind of never the same when after baby gets here too. A lot of things.
No.
Was that your oldest? Was that your first
Yeah,
when you?
yeah.
Oh
So
yeah.
Dylan's
So
gonna be
you're going through all
21.
these life changes too at the same time. Body
Right,
changes, life
right.
changes.
It was
You're
crazy.
you're in
And you
this
need
new
to
house,
make
AC,
money.
right? Oh yeah, of
And then you're
course.
like, I'm not doing enough. Oh my gosh. Like I'm,
Yeah. Oh gosh.
I do I put him in daycare? Do I not put him in daycare? Do I do
Right.
both? It's like just crazy.
Were
But
these were these days though that you're talking? Were they the kind of the makings of you?
I
Did
don't,
this make you more?
that's a really good question. I think I'm a better person having survived that than I was in
Yes.
the moment.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
But I think too, like if my mortgage career was 25 years and my oldest is turning 21, I literally had 4 years in the business where I wasn't a mom. And I didn't, only 4 years in my 25-year of mortgage career was I not a mother. There's just no way that doesn't impact a little bit of how you do your business.
Right.
Also, I used to worry way too much about like the loan process and making, I literally wouldn't, I probably could have taken on more business than I did when I was younger because I was just such a caretaker instead of just firing in the numbers and figuring out how to get it done. And I don't know, there's just so many lessons you learn over the course of your career,
Right.
especially in the career that we're in. Like in the real
Yeah.
estate industry, you never stop learning. There's never a
Exactly.
new twist or turn.
Right.
Um, the books and the courses and the licensing we take, they don't prepare us for anything.
Well,
There's
right.
nothing realistic about it.
Right, because even like in those hypotheticals that we get initially trained on, like there's still like nuances to each situation that it's not generally black and white.
Right.
You know what I mean? It there's always some sort of nuance that is a variable that that makes it different. It's not generally black and white. So yeah.
For sure. For sure. You got any other meaty questions for me?
So no, I mean
Is there
that
anything
that
else? Did I
says a
stir
lot.
anything else up?
No, that's
Okay.
that's really interesting to just kind of learn what that's like, and hopefully there are ladies out there that will watch this and kind of feel support like and find that relatable content to
I hope so. I think that if anyone was ever interested in coaching, specifically a coach that really focuses on women
yeah.
and high producing women, people that like, really, really like kind of want to kill it and want to make sure that they're not going off the rails along the ride, I can certainly make some
And
recommendations.
that's the thing. I wouldn't think that in along those lines. There's not you would. I always I mentioned that have talk to someone who's been there, done that. I don't know if a male coach can kind of fit that.
They
Um,
can, though, because I
yeah,
also worked with a man he was so good. He was so
yeah,
good.
yeah,
So good.
yeah.
Um, he's currently charging over 6 figures for a year, though, up front.
Mm, wow.
So he's doing something right.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So
But every, there's different stages of your life where you need different things. So,
exactly. So right, and it's like the early days of my struggles. I still have struggles, but they're definitely different than they were at that time. 8, 10 years ago.
we don't get any practice in
So
this life, every
right,
day
right.
is a new day. So,
So again, what we'll do? How can people find you?
oh, geez. Well, they can follow me on Instagram, of course. I think, at Lending with Laurie.
Lending
That's
with
like,
Laurie.
yes, I try to
We'll
make
put
my
that in the show
Instagram
notes too.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you've definitely added a lot of color to it too. It's good stuff. I'm a follower.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going for a little bit of the badass mortgage woman.
Yeah.
Um,
And and
embracing that.
and that's the thing. I've been telling people, get your plans together because what we're seeing in the market is, I mean, the rates are kind of coming down gradually.
They are a little better.
And what we're looking at too is that there's still this pent up demand from 2022, and because the rates were never comfortable enough. And so, Buffini's talking about the magic number right now, he believes, and it was tested in the new construction aspect, is 5.8.
Oh, I mean,
5
that would be wonderful, but I'd
5.8 that
settle.
people want to sell, and of course 5.8 may make things more affordable for the buyers.
Sure. I
that
mean,
that that might be. So I'm telling everybody, look, if you ever had a plan, start, even if you're not buying this summer or this spring, start now to plan to go through, because that's when you want to start talking to someone now.
Absolutely. And it's something that HMA offers that I wasn't able to offer before, and I think is just freaking so great, is we'll do a soft credit pull. So if you
Mm-hmm.
don't think you're going to buy,
Right.
I don't care if you're not going to buy until September. It's free and it doesn't impact your credit. Get a soft
Right.
credit pull. Get all your ducks in a row far in advance, because you know what? If something comes on the market, I think of this year as maybe the rate's not 5.875, but I would rather buy now with a slightly higher rate. I mean, the difference between 100 bucks a month over a year is twelve hundred
Mm-hmm.
dollars, but paying $25,000 more for that house next year, you're going to feel that a heck of a lot more than you're going to feel a higher rate. And
Right.
you
And
know,
that's the thing. A lot of it, supply and demand. So
for
if the
sure,
rates go down, people are going to be out looking to buy. That drives the price up. It's not.
absolutely.
A lot of people want to try to blame some sort of boogeyman that's not there. It comes down to simple economics, to
Oh,
be honest.
absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's not rocket science, but so that's the thing. Yeah.
So I got a dog.
So
Did you hear that?
get it. No, I didn't hear.
Oh, I
So
thought you guys all heard the barking. Sorry.
oh no, we're dog friendly here. So
Okay, that was loud.
um, but yeah, so get with Lori
Yeah,
soon,
get
and
pre-approved now.
and if you think that there might be something you got to work on, you'll do a soft pull, so like that way you can figure out what it is,
I love
and
that.
then be ready for. And that's what also is interesting is I've had people come to me and say, "Well, I'm not ready yet," but let's go. I'll talk to the lender now, and all of a sudden, making that step, they're in. Like they actually want to do this way sooner than they told me originally.
Right.
I see that too. That they realize I can do this. Actually, it's not as complicated as I thought. So I
I
run
mean,
into that too.
you're never going to be sorry that you're prepared. And I
Right. Yeah.
also was just
Right.
talking to my team this morning. I'm like, what I like to communicate to people is, people feel like they have to call me. Like, I'm like, okay, your realtor made you call me, right? Yeah, you got to check off this box. Like, a pre-approval is something you're required to get. But what comes with it is just such a wealth of information.
Right.
And the pre-approval is a number in a letter, but the estimates that come along with it is what shows you what your payment, your down payment, your rate, your closing costs. If you don't have a really good understanding of all those numbers, you cannot go confidently out into the market and shop for a home. And
Right.
if you do, then you're end up with some big surprise, because Zillow has said that your payment's $837, and that makes absolutely no sense. Or, your closing costs are completely unrealistic, or you didn't forecast for them. So
Right.
getting information in advance, all it's doing is educating you, your buyer, and making it a little easy to take that next step.
Right. Yeah. I've noticed that like at different lenders who have their online mortgage calculator, there are flaws in that. And it may vary because you don't know, because if your credit score is kind of like meh, then your
Right.
rate might be higher, or depends if you put less than 20% down, you may get a lower rate. And there's just so many variables.
It's
You got to talk.
it's whacked. It doesn't
Right.
make any sense. The
You
whole
can't just
rating, credit
right.
score, down payment is so nonsensical to, like, it just doesn't follow common sense rules. So yeah, so we like to get people ready to go
Yes.
before they're ready to buy,
Yes.
instead of the day
Right.
before. But,
Yeah, and it's
you
not
know,
like you're going to be, it's not a .com situation where, you talk to Laurie and all of a sudden you get all these randos calling you like every day as well, like after
oh,
work.
right.
Like it's and I think that may be what some people think happens, but it
No.
doesn't actually work like that either. So, and I don't hound people, sometimes to my detriment, because I feel like when they're ready, we'll talk and I'll follow up. But I sort of like give a little bit of a blanket there because I'm the kind of person who hates being just hammered all the time. You know what I mean?
No,
So
no
like
one
I
wants
try
to
to
be
provide
hammered.
that. You know what I mean? That kind of respect. So
Right?
so Laurie,
Um,
thank you so much
okay, cool.
for joining us. We have to do it
Thanks.
again, do it some more.
This is
Um,
fun.
yeah, let's do
Thanks
that.
for letting me
So
talk.
thank you for coming on and spending time with us today.
Yeah,
So
glad we
all
got
right.
the video worked out.
Yeah, yeah. So we got that.
Cool. All
All
right,
right,
Michael.
Laurie
Have a
Nelson.
great
You too.
afternoon. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Bye.